Alright, for our final set of poses, or at least our final vinyasa, I'd like to have you review DrRic's Warrior Wake Up. We're going to try to do the same thing but just in chair yoga, or in a chair. You always have to maintain a comfortable seated position. The knees should be at 90 degrees, that's right ankle. The feet should be flat on the floor. We'll start with whether you have a back to the chair or it's a stool like this, it doesn't matter, but you do have to account for some movement of the legs backwards. So if it's a high back chair or it has arms on it, you might have to sit forward. So we'll start with prayer pose. Bring up the hands to the sky. And as you'll notice in the DrRic's Warrior Wake Up, I usually will go into a Warrior 1. That's when you take the left foot, we'll start with the left foot that's closest to the camera, and you place it in a warrior position. That's with the left leg extended. Now I might have to raise this up a little bit, because in order for me to get my leg back there in a straight line, I'll have to have it extended and sit at the edge of the table, sit at the edge of the chair. The left leg should always be extended, and since this is chair yoga, you can still sit on the chair. Takes the work out of the quads, out of the legs. Right knee should always be above the ankle, and we're facing forward. So wherever we are in our practice, you just take the outside foot you're starting with and place it back. Then once you've placed it on the floor, edge of the foot is straight on the floor, knee is straight. You maintain your focus to wherever the front is going to be, and your hips face forward along with your shoulders. Usually from Warrior 1, I'll open up, taking a deep breath, to Warrior 2. Warrior 2 is essentially when you're facing the side. The right fingers go out to infinity, the left extends out in the opposite direction, and then this is a little bit off as far as the true warrior. Warrior 1 is when the body is kind of flat, but if you're in a chair, you have to have the legs come out a little bit forward. Warrior 2. You maintain Warrior 2. Every time you take a deep breath in, the fingers go in opposite directions, shoulders go back, chest comes out. Flip front hand up into Reverse Warrior. Reverse Warrior, you're essentially letting the back hand just drape down, or you can wrap it around and the front hand goes up. You try to stretch as much as possible the side of the high arm without compressing the other side. Feet stay the same. Always grounded. In my Warrior Wake Up, I'll have the upper hand prepare for extended side angle. That's when you lower it onto the bent knee and lift the other hand up into the ceiling. Sometimes to challenge, I'll have my students lift off of the knee, essentially pushing back the arms, shoulders apart, hands go in opposite directions, and then relying on the trunk again, or you can keep the right arm bent, or the forward arm bent. As you're ready, after you've taken some deep breaths in this extended side angle pose, I'll have both hands to the bent leg, preparing for Humble Warrior. Humble Warrior is when you're leaning forward. Usually you'll have to have a line straight from the back leg up through the torso, through the crown, and then the hands come in front. I sometimes will hold the hands together, fisting with deep breath and relaxing with exhale. But this is my version of the Warrior Shield. From here, this will be a little different. Usually I'll go into a Warrior 3, which is a lift-off. One-legged balance. I'll go straight into chair pose. And from chair pose, after maintaining the position for a short amount of time, come back up into hands to sky, and then prayer. So that's the version I have for chair yoga. it cuts down a couple of the poses that you'll see in the DrRic's Warrior Wake Up, the standard standing series of poses. But again, it's because you can't really do a Warrior 3 without lifting off, and the objective of chair-based yoga is not to get off the chair. So whether you use it because you have some disabilities with the lower extremity, or whether you use it because you just want to do some yoga at your desk and don't want to go outside or go to a gym, totally up to you. The most important thing is breath work. So we're going to try to do this linking into breath on the other side. I'll call out as I go. Start with prayer pose, set the intention for practice. Inhale, hands to sky. After about 3 breaths, after the last inhale, fingers go up. Exhale, Warrior 1. When you set, you probably can't see my leg, but when the leg is set, the foot is flat and the knee is straight, make sure your front knee is bent at 90 degrees, and then wherever the forward position is, you face both shoulders and hips forward. Again, I would probably do 3 breaths to get into the perfect posture or the perfect expression, your expression of the pose. As you take your last breath in of 3, exhale, open to Warrior 2. Again, the legs stay where they are, but the body and torso change, so that now instead of both shoulders and hips facing forward, both shoulders and hips are facing the side. You can either look out the side or look forward. Again, the objective is, with shoulders relaxed, you're looking over the middle finger of the front hand, and then the back hand is just going in the opposite direction. After 3 breaths in, inhale, palm up. Again, the back hand can either just drape down or wrap. Every breath gets deeper into the pose. Till the final breath, reaching up, bending the elbow, and allowing yourself to prep for extended side angle. Once the elbow hits the thigh, I like to have the arms sweep up into a good position. I think the sweeping up also helps with people with rotator cuff tears. Rotator cuff or biceps tendon, if you come in this direction and your scapula is not moving properly, it tends to impinge. This way, your scapula is following and allowing a lot of space for the subacromial area to not pinch on the rotator cuff. I'll explain that in a future tutorial. After 3 breaths in, whether you do the challenge position, elbow off, or the supported position, last breath in, reaching up, and then both hands repositioning. Foot still stays where it is, feet still stay where they are, knee stays bent in the front, but you now reposition hips and shoulders face forward again at a bit of an incline. So there's an imaginary line that goes along the axis of the back leg, through the torso, through the crown. And when you're balanced and your torso and trunk are strong, lift up into Humble Warrior. Again, I like to use Humble Warrior to grip the imaginary shield. And after you've had at least 3 deep breaths in, with the next breath in, both feet come to essentially a chair pose. Chair pose is usually feet together and arms elevated. In this case, you can keep your feet at hip width apart. Again, I keep the imaginary shield in front. And you can lift off if you like, so it does challenge your core a bit, and it does challenge or tense up your quads, the thigh muscles. And then after a few deep breaths in and out, relaxing the shoulders, a little tilt in the torso. Come back up, deep breath. And finish with an exhale and prayer pose. So that essentially is the Warrior Wake Up. You try it a couple times on each side. Not too many poses with the chair version of it, but it's good enough to stimulate a little bit of blood flow. And you can always try to lift off just a bit, so the pressure is a little bit off the chair. For those of you who are challenged, you can kind of just get enough pressure off so you're barely touching it, say, pant leg to vinyl or the chair, or you can just put all your weight into the chair. It's totally up to you. This is your practice. So the objective of practice is, your practice is to, again, tie the breath into the poses and then have the poses follow the flow of the breath. If you do that, again, the objective is to try to develop a letting go of this typical stress response that we have to external stressors or external events. Most of us can do that okay, but if you practice this version of yoga in your breath and your meditation, you're essentially zoning out of a lot of the external factors or external events. You don't necessarily ignore them, but you learn not to respond so quickly and primitively to everything that comes through. And you'll be able to make better decisions, be able to think clearer. You'll be able to have less of a stress reaction, which is a whole cascade of hormones that results in inflammation. And you can see the way I've talked about the anti-inflammatory lifestyle in other videos. So hopefully this helps. Namaste.